Hey, what's happening, guys? Dan Darrow here with another Options and Play video update. Hope you're all having a great week. No rest for the weary, huh? Couple weeks straight down, 1 week straight back up, and at least so far this week, kind of keeping that bullish momentum going. So I plan on doing a video either tomorrow or possibly Thursday, just kind of breaking down the spider setup. I want to see how today, maybe tomorrow plays out, but then just kind of going over the spider setups. I like to do that at least once a month. So be on the watch for that. What I want to talk about today is RH, and I know maybe some of you guys noticed that took a little bit more unusual um, uh, step of actually readying up the RH trade before the catalyst, right? So RH will report Wednesday night, and I wrote up the trade last night, and it was for a specific reason. What I've noticed, and I just want to go over like quickly. Well, first off, if you listen to my videos enough, and if you've been a member of the Options to Play team, you've seen in the letters that typically how I like to handle like trades that are volatility strategies, right? Like strangles or straddles, is that you enter the position late in the afternoon ahead of the catalyst, right? Because you kind of want the risk to line up with how you originally designed it, right? So you don't want to see like a huge move during the day and then completely throw off like the design of your strangle or straddle, right? So typically enter those positions late in the afternoon ahead of the catalyst. Um, RH is a little bit different. So the RH trade was a little more unusual, and it's actually because of something I saw last week. So I don't know if you guys remember or if you were involved, but Stitch Fix, right? So this was one of the ones I was really focused on last week. One of the ones we spent some time going over in last week's option session. And what was interesting and maybe unusual on Stitch Fix was the pricing of the options. Okay, this is a name that has a really consistent history, or at least over the last year, right? It had a really consistent history of big moves when it reported, right? So it was here, it was here, it was here, and then obviously it was here, right? So you saw a name that had a very consistent history of big moves. Most of the time it was alternating gains and losses. So remember this as we go into restoration hardware. So very consistent pattern of big moves, a lot of volatile swings, right? Not a lot of consistency. And coming into the week, the options were priced at like 375 or so, and that was um, only about only about a third really of what had averaged over the last 4 quarters. I mean, even backing out like this crazy big drop in October of last year, it was still about like half of what it had averaged over the last couple quarters, right? So it was a little unusual, and that's why we thought like a strangle was a good idea because the options seemed to be not pricing the potential. Not only just for the technical setup alone, but because of over the last 4 quarters, it's demonstrated that it could move quite a bit more than what the options were anticipating. And what we saw was coming into the week, even going into the like the day of earnings, options were only looking for like 360, 370 in that ballpark. And then the day of earnings, the volume really got juiced, right? So people stepped in, and the options got bid up, and they went out actually like the night of. So like they opened the day like 360, 370, and they went out that day like around 410. 415. So they went up almost 10 to 15% during the day. And now, fast forward to restoration hardware, and I'm seeing a lot of the kind of like similar setup playing out right now, right? So this is a name that has a very consistent history of moving, right? Um, and similar to Stitch Fix, right? So a lot of the moves have been in the opposite direction as the quarter before, right? But one thing you'll notice is that it's consistently a mover, right? So over the last 4 quarters, it's averaged about a 30-point swing, all right? And even if you back out like this one mega monster move last June, you're still looking at about 25 points on average over the previous 3 quarters. All right. So coming into the week, the restoration of hardware options are only priced in about 14. All right. So has a very consistent history of moving. Right here in over the last 5 quarters, has averaged about 25 over the last three, 30 over the last four, and options were only priced in at 14. So, to me, like, I had it on my radar coming into the week, and as things started to shake out, and I noticed some of like these similarities with Stitch Fix, how, very consistent mover, a lot of back and forth moves, right? A lot of up, a lot of down, really not a whole lot of consistency in terms of direction one quarter to the next, right? Just very similar to Stitch Fix. Stitch Fix was fairly heavily shorted, so was Restoration Hardware. It's underneath a lot of key moving averages, right? So was Stitch Fix. So I started to recognize some of like the similarities between the two, and that's why I thought maybe getting in prior to the day before and then seeing if you see like a lot of that late money coming in, right? As people kind of like jump in on the day of the report. So that's why I thought maybe getting involved the day prior versus the day of. But what this sets up now though obviously is you're gonna have to keep an eye on it tomorrow, because if there is like say like a 3, 4, 5 point move up or down tomorrow, and kind of shifts the bet or skews it very dramatically in one direction, right? If it gets up to 100 or if it drops down into like the high 80s, then we might have to adjust it. But if you're wondering why I wrote that trade up early, that was why. Figured I'd go over it just because, you probably noticed it was a little bit more unusual. But that's the reason why I noticed some of the similarities between this and Stitch Fix last week. And I saw how the options really exploded on the day of report on that one. All right. Cool. So, there aren't that many names this week. I mean, really, I guess for the remainder of June, they're gonna be a little bit further and farther between. But the ones that are reporting, there's definitely some potential there. Restoration Hardware, Lulu, Broadcom on Friday, um, and honestly, before you know it, earnings season is going to be here in July, and hopefully. Volatility just across the market remains elevated as a nice little bridge between the end of this earnings and the start of the next one in July. So it'd be like almost like the perfect bridge if volatility remains elevated. Give plenty of trade ideas for like swings, and then earnings season starts up in July, and then you got a whole ton of catalysts coming up. All right. So let me know what you think. I'd love to hear from you guys. Reach out, questions, comments. Hope you guys have a wonderful night, and I'll talk to you all tomorrow.